Today we're ranking underrated motorcycles. We're talking the least underrated to the most underrated, the most slept on motorcycles. I'm sure you got some good ones cooked up, Logan.
I got some good ones, but you know what else is underrated? Whiteboard videos.
That's very true. I know you guys love these, so let's jump right in. So the format for today's video is very simple. I have my list over here, we have Logan's list over there, and in the middle we have a twist. We have our verdict where we will agree or disagree on whether or not the bike is underrated. My first choice for today, Logan, is a layup. It's a simple one, but I think this one really is underrated. It's the Honda CB1000R. The single R, the single-sided swing arm bike. I think a lot of people sleep on this one because it doesn't make, King Kong levels of horsepower, but it's a really sweet ride. I think it's really underrated and I like it. What do you think?
I think it's definitely underrated. I think I personally have even slept on it, you know what I mean? Because people brush it off because it's not like a super aggro, like hyper naked crazy thing, right?
That's the thing. It's definitely seen as like the more calm, more demure, more Honda, more buttoned up, and the hyper naked category has gotten so absurd. We have supercharged bikes, we have screaming V4s, it's gotten really out of hand. And I think what's great about this bike is it's a decent price point. I think it's like $13,000, $14,000 at the top end. You can probably get them for a decent price nowadays.
Probably, yeah.
Honda's kind of usurped it a little bit with their new Hornet, which is an even more good price and really great features. But this one, I think it just looks really nice. It's got the single round headlight that everybody loves so much. Classic vibes, nice sculpted tank. I rode and reviewed one, and I actually looked back before doing this video and I was like, that thing has like 600,000 views. Wow. So maybe it's not that underrated, but I personally thought it was a very underrated bike and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bike that's probably underrated, but it's sort of just that it's so normal and good and just kind of exists, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't need to justify its existence through ostentatious grandeur. It just
that's all of motorcycling to justify your existence.
And I think that's why it's probably slept on, is it does what it's meant to do, and it's just sort of simple and maybe not particularly attention grabbing.
Yeah. I think it's, it's like a very simple and sophisticated bike, and it doesn't grab your attention much, and by nature it's underrated. So do you agree or disagree?
I would agree. I would say this is an underrated motorcycle.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So I'm starting off with a little bit of a layup too, and that's gonna be Suzuki's GSX-S750.
Ooh, that's a good choice. Why do you think it's underrated?
Well, it's underrated because it seems like they can't even give these bikes away, you know what I mean? But I think it's underrated because if you're shopping solely on performance per dollar, which a lot of motorcyclists seem to be.
I would say a lot of our audience definitely does.
Skip the CF Moto, go pick up a lightly used GSX-750.
Oh man, yeah, lightly used,
used,
$5 grand.
$5 grand, $4 grand, and that's what's great. So say you want to be a Gixxer squid, bad credit, right? Can't finance a bike. You could probably scrounge together $4 or $5 grand to get a reasonably used GSX-750, and you'll still get 115 horsepower, give or take.
Does it really make that much?
Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, when you think because what the GSX-R 750 makes.
Well, if the internet is to be believed, it's like 150 horsepower. Right. I don't think it makes that much. But yeah, the 750 is a little detuned. And I think, you got to live with this bike. It's very much like early 2010s coated. It's very, like no features, no farkles. Like, again, if you are, like you said, you're thinking about a CF Moto and then you're looking at this, you're like, where are my light up features? Where's this? Where's that? Can we make a video where CF Moto owners don't catch a stray? That's the real challenge here.
I don't know. I think somebody's, we've moved on from Janus, but someone's got to take the blunt of our scorn,
Someone has to take it. This is a good pick though, GSX-750. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, like if you want just like a nice, solid, sturdy inline 4 street motorcycle that's just gonna run forever, and you don't want to spend much money. You want something newer. You don't want to go way back to like an FZ6.
Yeah, because I was gonna say a lot of people are still like, FZ6 is so slept on, but it's like. Really one, old. Not really, but also two, that's really kind of an old bike. We're 2026 now, you know what I mean? Like, that's a 25-year-old motorcycle, depending on the age, right? Or the model year.
Yeah, that's older than you.
That's older than me.
Yeah.
By a couple years.
Couple years. So I'm going to agree with you. This is definitely a underrated bike, very slept on. Very much so.
I've never even seen one.
Me either. That's how slept on they are. Moving on. All right, Logan, this next one is not going to be unfamiliar to you because you've done the Facebook videos and my love of this bike. And it is the first generation Multistrada. This, I think, is a highly underrated slept-on motorcycle and is aged like a fine wine. Some people think Pierre Terblanche's creations are very hard to look at. I think they have a sort of interesting, let's say, Bauhaus aesthetic with their round features. But really, this bike, it pioneered the sport touring adventure crossover whatever category. The motor, back in the day, people were like, oh my God, it's some like 1000cc Ducati engine, like blah, blah, blah. But now, with the hindsight of time, these are dead simple to work on.
Right.
2-valve, air-cooled, everything's accessible because there's no belly pan, there's no fairings underneath. I think this is a super underrated bike. People are giving these things away on Facebook Marketplace. I mean, we found a ton of them. Like
$3,500
bucks. You get a really cool, interesting red Ducati. Is it the red Ducati you really want? Probably not. But if you want to go long distances and you want something interesting, first gen multi, dude.
Yeah.
That's my choice.
No, I mean, I would agree. I think it's definitely grown on me. Like, the more frequently you look at it, you know, you start seeing things that maybe you didn't quite notice on first glance. And yeah, it is art, right? It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to make you think new thoughts and ideas that maybe you hadn't considered before. I'm kind of torn because if you think long distance motorcycle or
20-year-old
Ducati, I don't know
what you mean, yeah. You got to really be adventurous for that.
But do I think it's underrated in the sense of, I think it's more attractive than people give it credit for. I think it's interesting, and I think in an era of everything starting to look sort of the same, you know, to follow a similar aesthetic guidelines that we've all agreed is like, you know, the pinnacle of automotive design. I think seeing motorcycles like the first gen Multistrada is refreshing, you know what I mean? To see something that is challenging.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good way of putting it. It's aged like a sort of esoteric album. You know, it's like at the time it was like, wow, this is kind of weird and different. But with hindsight, you're like, it's actually kind of sick. You know, like actually this paved the way and was kind of interesting. That was my choice for it, but I'm glad to hear you also think it's underrated. So do I get the check? Underrated?
Yeah, I'll give it a check.
Okay, sweet. Look at that, Logan and I think our tastes are gonna be pretty aligned today. We may agree with each other all the way down the board.
The audience doesn't like when mom and dad fight anyway,
That's
so
true.
we gotta stay agreeable.
Yeah, because we gotta stay together for the kids. We gotta stay together for the kids. Moving on.
So sometimes, you know, you might want to own a sport bike. Sometimes that sport bike might even be a Kawasaki. But here's the thing. You don't want to be a total degenerate Kyle douchebag. Ninja 1000.
Oh.
Sport bike for a non-sport bike guy. Someone that's not trying to be too cool. They know their limitations. They got the lower back pain. They got, you know, maybe a little bit of a beer belly on them. But they're comfortable in themselves, you know. They got the Costco brand jeans, you know. Ninja 1000, I think is pretty sweet. Even the Ninja 1000 SX, again, I never really see, I don't hang out with a lot of 50-year-old guys, but I don't see a lot of them or hear a lot of people talk about them. But it's a pretty sweet bike, even the new one, like 14,000 bucks, and you get, you know, big old stonking D-tune inline 4 that'll run forever, decent power, kind of heavy but more comfortable. I think it's kind of slept on.
I think the reason you don't see this is because you're so urban coded. You're so in your neighborhood here in Austin. You don't go out to the burbs. These are burby people, man.
Yeah,
like, this is a 50-year-old, like you said, Costco guy. Like, yeah, dude, like Ninja 1000 for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the obvious choice is like Concourse 14, like an FJR and stuff.
But that's not underrated.
No, exactly.
You know, that's
I think that 1000's underrated, especially amongst younger demographics, you know, sub 45, right? They're like,
totally, yeah.
They're like, no, I can tough out the full ZX-10, you know?
Yeah.
But you can't, and you don't need to.
And you don't need to. And the thing is, like, you don't even get much performance benefit for a ZX-10 on road that a Ninja 1000 can't do.
Yeah, for sure.
A reasonably competent rider is going to ride just as fast on a Ninja 1000 as he would on a ZX-10, unless you're roll racing your buddies on the highway and you're looking for clout. But I think this is a great choice. It's like no ego, underrated. Like, you can get them for great pricing.
Paint match bags.
Paint match bags, yeah. Like, you can get them in the SX trim as well. Like, yeah, Ninja 1000, yeah, definitely underrated for sure. We've talked about these in our videos as well. And the best part is, Kawasaki's been making inline 4s for so long. This is detuned. This thing will never break, dude. It'll never break.
Yeah, only the 636s break.
Unfortunately, yeah. What are we on, the 5th recall on that bad boy? All right, Logan, next up is a oddball pick. And one that in a recent video that just went live, I think last week, many people called out to us, and I was like, you know what? They have a point. It's the Kawasaki W800. I think the W800 is super underrated. It's a little expensive, but the more I thought about this bike, I was like, actually, this is one of the most interesting genuinely authentic to the point where I didn't even include it in our modern retro video because it wasn't modern enough. It was just simply an old bike. And it is so unique in that way, where we're so used to like Triumph stuff that has liquid cooling and it works really well, and it's like such a nice thing to own. But if you really want like an old bike that's simply being made new, this is your choice right here. I think if you are really committed to the bit for like the retro bike thing, if you want like ultimate kind of cool guy points, it's not a Janus, it's not a Royal Enfield, it's not a Triumph. I think a W800 is like the pinnacle. I think it's really underrated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty cool. As you know, I have a soft spot for UJM bikes. Like, you know, that's kind of what I started out on riding. And it is interesting, like, yeah, you don't think about it that often. No. It's certainly underrated because I don't even really consider it in the modern retro category because, again, I just think of it as like an old bike.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially if you find one on the used market, like, because $10,000 or whatever it costs for the super, but maybe that's what it costs to make a completely, because it's probably completely separate like equipment and parts and stuff. It's like literally all the old stuff.
They got to fire up old Bessie to actually like craft this thing.
Yeah.
So fun fact, the starter switch on this bike is actually from the 1971 W1 or whatever, like the really old bike. So yeah, to your point, maybe it does cost that much money because they have to like special make them or whatever.
There's like one specific guy, like one like, you know, line tech or whatever. He's like been there since the 70s, and they gotta go knock on the door. He's like got like the Scrooge like old timey sleep cap or whatever. And he's like, what are we doing? And then like, oh, we got an order for a couple more W800s. He's like, again, I just made one 2 years ago.
They're like, Takamata-san, wake up, come on. So I think it's just a really old school, really interesting bike. And yeah, I've never seen one in person. Like I'm seeing a thread with a lot of these bikes is like, you just don't see them. And I think that helps the definition of like underrated, because if you see a bike all the time, it can't be underrated. You know, you can't say like, oh, the Yamaha R7's underrated, a BMW GS is underrated. You see those all the time. So they kind of have to be rare. And yeah, I've never seen one of these before.
And yeah, I guess in the context too, it's like, it's essentially what Royal Enfield does, but a better, kind of more upmarket version.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So underrated?
I agree. I think it's
all
underrated.
right, sweet. 3 for 3. Underrated.
Can I rock it, lefty?
There you go.
That's decent.
You know how every few years a camera comes along that makes you rethink what type of footage is possible to capture on board a motorcycle? Motorcycle content is a whole new landscape thanks to cameras like this. The DJI Osmo 360 doesn't just say 8K, it means it. You're getting true native 8K capture with a massive dynamic range. There's 13.5 stops of light and shadow detail, so everything from the sparkle of the light hitting the gas tank to the shadows under the bridge looks crisp and balanced. This thing shoots up to 8K at 50 frames per second. That's the highest resolution you'll find in a consumer 360 camera. Motion looks silky smooth even when you're tearing it up on track or tearing up your local twisties. The Osmo 360 uses the industry's first 1-inch 360-degree imaging square sensor with an f1.9 aperture that drinks in light. Flip on super night mode and you'll capture neon reflections, city skylines, and tail light streaks like a movie scene. Whether you're filming a canyon run at sunrise or a midnight ride downtown, the Osmo 360 keeps everything detailed, sharp, and cinematic. No noise, no grain, no fuss. If you ever wanted your riding footage to look like it belongs on the big screen, then this is your tool. Hit the link in the description to grab your DJI Osmo 360 and step into true 8K riding footage today.
You know, we hear a lot of people talk about the BMW GS in our most recent overrated motorcycles. We maybe said a few disparaging words about the BMW GS. People say it might not be the best off-road, it might not be the best tour, but it's the thing that can do a little bit of all of that really well. Here's the thing. It's not the only motorcycle that can do a little bit of everything. And this one costs half the price.
Super Tenere. You really don't think about that one much. All right, explain. What's up with the Super Tenere?
I mean, yeah, just big, oversized ADV bike that's probably a little bit more comfortable doing, you know, longer highway distance things compared to a Tenere 700 or Transalp or V-Strom or whatever. Got those extra cubes, a lot of displacement, like 80-something foot-pounds of torque. She's a big girl, nearly 600 pounds, but when you're slabbing up on the highway, you want that stability. She wears the weight down low, you know, she carries the weight well. And yeah, and I just think it's for how much people talk about, and not just GS guys, but like KTM Super Adventure and stuff, it's just so excessive. And I think the Super Tenere, Kind of similar to the Africa Twin, though the Africa Twin is certainly not underrated, I think, by any stretch of the imagination.
No, for sure.
Kind of accomplishes the same thing of being like, you kind of do some gravelly road, light off-road stuff, but it's sort of like a touring bike that has a little bit of extra chops if you find yourself in a jam, you know, if you find yourself on a gravel road you didn't anticipate or something.
Yeah, like you'll make it through. And that's a really good point. Basically, the Super Tenere is like, it's like a budget GS with the cylinders actually oriented in the correct place. And then, yeah, it's like an Africa Twin. I remember we were doing a video not long ago where we were like, oh my God, an Africa Twin is how much money?
Pretty
you know,
expensive,
like super expensive. So these, I think like used, nobody wants them.
Yeah.
So I've seen these pop up. I remember we did a Facebook episode. It was like $4,000 for like a lightly used 2015 Super Tenere. Like definitely a slept-on motorcycle.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't even know that Yamaha makes this bike.
Right.
They only know T7, which a T7 is very good for all the things you described. But again, if you want that weight, you want that slabability, you do want more pounds underneath you. And at nearly 600, the Super Tenere will accomplish that like big bike feel. I hadn't thought about that.
And I think about, you know, people do those like cheap car, cheap bike challenges or something. Like if you were doing that, you flew out to wherever and you found a Super Tenere and had to drive it back to, you know, across the country, it would be like the absolute perfect cheap bike challenge bike.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. If you guys are cheapskates out there, you don't want to spend much money, best bang for buck, Super Tenere. Those deals are out there all day long. The best part is they were owned by old timers, color match bags, never dropped, pristinely cared for, comes from a good neighborhood. Yeah, I'll give it to you.
Good
Underrated.
school district.
Yeah, good school. I know all about that. You pay a premium for those, baby. Moving on. Logan, we're coming full circle. We're whipping it all the way around. In our overrated video, you had a pretty spicy take on a certain Suzuki, but many people don't know that for a brief period in the mid-2000s, Suzuki made a big brother to the SV650 called the SV1000. And the SV1000, to me, has aged like a fine wine. Big torquey V-twin from the TL1000 race bike, making roughly like 80-something horsepower, 80 foot-pounds of torque, but most crucially, this bike utilizes the same body, plastics, slightly different frame from the SV650, doesn't have the TL1000's Widowmaker shock.
Right.
So it's not gonna kill you. So bulletproof, reliable, really torquey V-twin. These are a little harder to find because they only made them for about 4 years. But if you know, you know. The I almost said SV650, SV1000, that's how slept on it is. It doesn't even roll off the tongue. Is to me a super underrated motorcycle. Super underrated.
No, I mean, I think they're cool. Yeah, you see them pop up from time to time. And that era, like the big twin era, like had a lot of cool bikes.
Yeah.
But of them, I think because there were so many cool bikes, the SV1000 got like a little bit overshadowed, you know what I mean?
It was very road focused, very like, you know, street oriented. There was a lot of like really spicy big twins.
Yeah, and it kind of predated the like hyper naked. Obviously it's power-wise not a hyper naked by today's standards, but I think at that time the like naked bike thing was very much approachable, more entry level stuff. That's why the SV650 was so widely praised, and you know, the smaller displacement monsters and stuff. So I feel like the SV1000 was just kind of like not of the time, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And so was sort of, people are like, V-twin and a naked bike, what is that, a Harley?
Yeah. But they were like half fared too, which is why people got confused by it. But that's why I think like in a world where our twins keep getting bigger and bigger, and we're getting not so super sports and fully fared bikes that are slightly more upright, we're slowly converging back to this point. You know, like what is a Panigale V2 current gen? If not a really nice SV1000, right? Because like the new Panigale V2, it's an 890cc, it's close to 1000, like KTM 990s, right? Yamaha R9, 890. We're getting back to this displacement.
SV1000 have clip-ons though, or was it handlebar?
I believe it was handlebars. You guys correct me in the comments down below, but I think it was more like road handlebars.
Like it was like a 2.0 kind of?
Yeah, it was like a 2.0, yeah. Which that's, I mean, we talked about that, like Aprilia needs to make like a 2.0 900 or something with like a parallel twin. Like the gap right now between V4s and parallel twins in Aprilia's lineup is crazy, but that's just a side note. But yeah, SV1000 is my choice. Underrated for sure. What do you think? Agree, disagree, half agree?
So I'm gonna disagree only for the fact that, well, sort of underrated, it's also kind of a cult classic.
Okay,
so maybe it's not underrated
too far.
enough. What's the symbol for half?
Maybe like a circle. I have no idea. Ooh, nice.
That looks insane.
That's a good circle. Logan's left-handed too. He didn't do too great in elementary school. That's why.
And he needed the big pencils.
the big pencil. Yeah.
So last week, not only did I offend people with my take on the SV650, I seem to have touched a nerve with Grom owners as well. I got some backlash about that, I think. But so here today, I will continue to challenge the Grom's existence. And instead, I give you the Van 200.
Oh, come on.
So stick with me.
You don't even believe this.
So
no, because I've talked to you about the Van before, and you're like, that's a dopey little crap. Like, you don't even believe that. Go on.
No, I think.
Go on.
Because I was thinking about it, the Van 200 is like the performative male version of the T-Dub.
That's really
It's
true.
like a T-Dub that drinks matcha and reads Infinite Jest in the coffee shop.
That's really fair.
it's
And I have a singular experience with the Van 200 that correlates that, or corroborates that rather. The only time I have ever seen a Van 200, I'm not even kidding, I was in the south of France.
Wow.
I was on the coast, and we were in this tiny little village. I was getting some espresso. There was a Van 200 there. So the coastal French elite having their Van 200. So I agree with you there.
I just think it's cool, and I think it's underrated. Honda gets all the credit for mini bike stuff. Obviously they sort of invented the genre, if you will, but I think, it's cooler than a Z125. Z125 is the Grom you have at home, you know what I mean? But a Van, what the hell even is that? Cafe racer, big wheeled, weird thing.
I think it's a cafe racer with an autoimmune disease, which we've made that joke before, but it's still funny every time I say it. Yeah, maybe like a bobber with leprosy or something. It's all its like extremities are misshapen, like the wheel's too big, or the tire's too big. It's a weird proportion bike.
And I keep saying mini bike, comparing it to mini bikes. It's that weird in-between size.
It's sort of like a 2/3 sized bike.
Maybe actually, we've got a video coming up later this week on the new beginner light category, this mysterious sub 300 category that's making its way back into motorcycles.
Manufacturers are forcing down our throats.
Yeah.
In the future, you'll own nothing and be happy. They want you to eat bugs and have Van 200s.
Everyone leases Van 200s.
The future that liberals want. I disagree with you, though. I don't think the Van is underrated. I think the Van starts to get into this territory where it's like cult classic, strange. Suzuki stopped making that in 2016.
I think they only made it for a couple years.
And here's the thing. I think for Suzuki to stop making a bike,
that's true.
They gotta really be like, nobody's buying this thing, because they'll keep printing out bikes until the cows come home. So I disagree with you. I think
they made it at the same time as the TU 250 too, which is also weird. That's what I used in my MSF course.
Oh yeah. That's the weird little classic style.
Yeah, it looks like a little roadster.
Yeah, but it's also 2/3 sized, right? It's a bit small. Yeah. But no, I can't agree with you. I'm sorry. I don't think it's underrated. I think it's correctly rated.
Yeah.
And the market reflects
Van 200 fans, sound off in the comments. I know you're out there.
All right, Logan, you ready?
Yeah.
For my ultimate choice, the most underrated motorcycle in my opinion, the one that never got its praise in its day and still to this day has an army of devoted weirdos that love it to death. It is none other than the Buell XB12R, baby, the Firebolt. I have a soft spot for these. I think Eric Buell was a bit of a mad genius, was maligned by Harley-Davidson. I really thought nothing of Buell until I actually rode one. I had the chance to ride an XB9 in 2020, I think, almost 6 years ago. And I was just I can't believe how well this thing handles. It handled so nice. We were actually riding it back to back with a new MT-09 at the time. And I was like, this destroys the MT-09.
Wow.
And I was like, that's crazy. But the motor was a total dog. So XB12R, a little bit more power, a little bit more grunt. So flickable, so agile, so interesting, so many unique design features to it. It starts to edge into cult status, weirdo bike, but I still think that because it has the 1200 Sportster engine in it, it's reasonably reliable, it's reasonably easy to service, right? And there is a devoted core of people that love these.
Yeah.
So I think, I think it perfectly fits the underrated bike, because if you don't ride it, you kind of think, whatever, and then you ride it this thing's amazing. So that's my choice, most underrated.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from for sure. I'm not going to challenge that opinion. I'm also kind of a bit of a Buell fanboy. Not that I've ever owned one, but yeah, the story's fascinating, and I'm from the Midwest, so I like that kind of Midwestern engineering lore or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do think if you just saw a Buell especially like a Buell prior to like EBR or whatever, like a true Buell, like if you had no concept of like all the design that went into it and that kind of engineering hacks to make it perform really well, you wouldn't really think much of it. You'd be like, oh, this is a weird kind of like 90s, 2000s bike, you know?
Yeah, I think the first thing you think is, but why is that frame so big? And you're like, because there's gas in it.
There's gas in it. Why are the brake rotors on the edge, on the outside?
There's only one of them. Yeah,
There's only one of them,
it's so funky and quirky, and I think the XB12R to me is like the Buell. I think it's like the cool Buell to get, has its own name, Firebolt, best bikes have names, and it's a cool bike, underrated. Yeah, that's all I got to say about it. Agree, disagree?
I'd agree.
All right, sweet. 4 out of 5 today for me. Couldn't give it to me on the SB1000, that's fine. That's fine. All right, last up, what do you got? Your most underrated bike.
So when I first started showing up on the channel, people were like, oh, he's gonna be a Harley guy. And then I stopped talking about I never really did talk about Harley-Davidson. There's not that much to talk about. And then I was like, I haven't even ridden my Sportster in like 3 months. So I was thinking, what's an underrated bike from Harley-Davidson? It's the Nightster, the new Nightster, and you gotta bear with me because there's a little bit of a story that goes into it.
I'm shocked. I'm speechless. The new Nightster?
So this is what really turned me on to the new Nightster. There's this like shop in Arizona, I think, Rossi Originals. It does like Dyna Bro stunt stuff, crazy stunt, Dyna stunts. And they bought a Nightster and they're like, this is essentially like a Dyna, the dimensions of a Dyna, but with like 5 times the horsepower or 6 times the horsepower. And they're doing crazy stuff with it, like just like immediate like rolling burnouts and like crazy wheelies and stuff. And all they did was like, you know, put some aftermarket suspension on it, like on the shocks, and then a taller handlebar or something. They're doing like crazy stuff. And I'm like, this is kind of reinvigoration that like Harley should have been leaning into that, you know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
The same way we've made jokes about how like Kawasaki should do like a Street Fighter version of the 636 that's like tailored to like stunt culture and the history of stunting those bikes. I feel like Harley should have leaned into the West Coast Dyna thing with the Nightster, put like a little fairing on a taller handlebar, and made it this like hooligan bike, right? So that's kind of where my head's with it, and it costs less than $10,000. And
now it does.
Now it does.
It didn't
because they de-spec'd it.
Yeah.
They made a base model and then made the special.
So let me get this straight. The Nightster is underrated because in your mind's fiction, it could be this like stunt thing for Harley. Am I following this correctly?
Yeah, and not even my mind's fiction. I've seen all the videos. There are people doing it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
I just wanted like a cool V-twin, modern V, and like this Nightster. If we get enough of these Dyna guys doing cool stuff in the Nightster, it's gonna be way cooler than like all the Instagram coded like Indian Scouts out there. Like the Indian Scout bobber is like really kind of lame nowadays because it's just like the like.
How many more of those are we gonna get? How many more Instagram Indian Scout bobber guys can the world possibly need?
We already have like too many.
3 dozen of them. That's crazy.
But the Nightster is kind of, I think it could be like the more hard-edged, a little bit unrefined version of that. So yeah.
Okay.
Long story long.
I can't give it to you. I really can't. I'm not even following the logic. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to understand how it's underrated, and
well, because no one likes it. Sport bike guys don't like it. Harley guys don't like it. So it's not overrated or rated at all. I don't think.
That's true. I guess it is.
But I think if you wanted a modern, like that's a pretty nice engine, makes pretty good power, liquid cooled, you know, kind of high revving, lots of torque. It looks the silhouette of a Sportster more so than the Sportster S.
To me, it is the new Sportster.
Yeah, like the left side of it is like kind of
the unfinished side.
Unfinished.
Yeah.
But you're gonna drop it doing wheelies and stuff anyway. Who cares?
I don't know how many people are buying Nightsters to pop wheelies and stuff.
I don't know. I think there's enough to make it cool.
I think Logan thought that by the end of the video, he could just go off the rails. So you let us know in the comments down below if you agree with this mind's fiction of the Nightster. Any other of our picks as well, let us know what you think. I'm sure you have already. Thanks so much for tuning in. Check out today's video. We appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.